In today's lecture, I will be telling you about the basic differences between basic and applied research. What is the wet and dry research? What is quantitative and qualitative research? And what are the basics in animal experimentation? And I'll give you some terms regarding research ethics. So, starting from the beginning, I was telling you that the word research has been derived from French language, and the actual word is researcher, which means to explore deeply for getting scientific knowledge and deep knowledge to explore something. So that word has been taken into the research into the English language. Now research is of two types basically: basic research, which is quite deeper, which needs a more extensive time, and that lays the groundwork, and you know that's quite complicated as well in the beginning. And other type of research is the applied research. Now, basic research does not show up usually in the world. The scientists don't commercialize it. They don't earn a lot of money, but that's provide the groundwork for the applied research, basically. Now, basic research cannot be commercialized and it cannot be taken benefits from, while the uh, applied research can be used. It can be commercialized. It can be used to resolve the issues of modern time. So, what are the basic differences between these two type of researches? If I give you the examples, uh, the basic research, does not focus on applications, does not use the data for providing the instruments or something. Like if a scientist wants to know how the universe started, how the electrons can be, produced, for example, what is inside the electrons. For example, we know that there are hundreds of different other particles which are smaller even than, like positron, for example, which are there. But this type of research, never show up, and it's quite complicated. A lot of funds are required for that. While if we don't have the basic research, we cannot grow up. We cannot have computer, we cannot have air conditioners, we cannot have all the things which we have nowadays. Based on the basic research, which is also known as complementary or pure research, the applied research, makes the instruments, makes those things which are usable by the human beings. Like I just give you one example. If a researcher finds out how to originate the electrons in the basic research, the applied researcher will use it for producing the electricity and will tell us how to use it through the cables in the homes. Microwaves were discovered almost 50 to 60 years back. Now, applied researcher use the instrument of microwave and we use it at homes. In the same way, mobile rays were, discovered almost 30 to 40 years back, and nowadays we are using, mobile phones. So once we use that basic knowledge and we apply it, then we call it that applied research, basically. So applied research can be fruitful, can be beneficial, can be commercialized. We can make a lot of money from that, and it's quite visible. It can be showed to the modern world. While those researchers which are basic researchers, they usually don't show up. But basically, those who are doing basic research, they are the heroes basically because they provide the groundwork. Okay, as far as wet and dry research is concerned, these are two other terms. The research which is applied, which is performed in the laboratories, whether it's pharmaceutical research, it's chemical research, physical research, biological research, any type of research which is performed in the laboratory, we call that research as the wet research. But if we perform research in the form of surveys, clinical trials, in the form of interviews, in the form of group discussions, we call this type of research as the dry research because the person is not working in the lab at all. The person who is doing surveys or interviews, he does not need to work together with certain chemicals. So that's why we call it dry research. Okay, we have two other terms as well. We call that as the quantitative research and the qualitative research. Now, what are these terms? Well, the quantitative research is the same which we call as the wet research. So wet research is basically a slang for quantitative research. Whenever we have to statistically look for the data, for example, whenever we are willing to check whether certain drugs have antimicrobial effect, anti anti-ulcer effect, anti-inflammatory effect. So we are checking the quantity of something. We check whether these drugs can reduce the inflammatory mediators in the body or not. So whenever the quantity is checked, whenever the numbers or data is checked, we call it as the quantitative research. Experimentation in the laboratories, all types of laboratories, whether, as I said earlier, whether you are performing chemical research, biological research, pharmaceutical research, you are performing basically quantitative research. But if you are purely performing surveys, you have devised some questionnaires, and you provide open angle, questions to the participants, and you conduct interviews. You go and live with certain group of people for 1 week or 1 month, and you collect information from them, and you want to get insight. You want to get deep knowledge regarding any theory, any concept, any experience which is not properly explained. Okay, and you just want to get more knowledge about that, but you don't want to do any experiment in the laboratory. We call that type of research as the qualitative research. So both these researches are quite different, and their methods are quite different. While coming to the, I'll not go deeper into qualitative or quantitative research. I will now brief you guys about some basics of the animal experimentation. Well, in biological research, in chemical research, in pharmaceutical or microbiological research, animals are widely used for the experimentation. Well, before animal experimentation, people or the researchers or scientists used to use self-experimentation. What is self-experimentation? Let me tell you. Self-experimentation is something like I perform research on myself. I develop drugs from natural sources or from any other source, and I check it on myself. If I check it on myself, that will be known as a self-experimentation. That was quite common in ancient era. Like if I tell you one example, Edward Jenner, who developed the vaccine of smallpox, he performed that experiment of vaccine of smallpox on his own son, who was younger than 5 years. And after performing the experiment of vaccine on his own son, he performed the experiments on the neighboring children, those who were in his neighbor. So that was quite common. But after 1970s, certain rules were devised, and certain rules were devised to perform experiments on either human beings or on the animals. Most of the time, before performing experiments on human beings, we perform experiments on the animals. And in animals, we have to consider certain things. Uh, Even we can use, dogs, frogs, rabbits, guinea pigs, mice or rats. We have to check different factors. Sometimes uh, economical, value is seen. Sometimes we see that which animals can give us better result, and sometimes the when the model is established, we have to decide that which model can give us better results and which animal is easy to handle. Animal handling is also very important. So based on all these factors, whenever you're performing research, basically your supervisor will tell you that which animal should be used. Now, once you start performing research, which is animal research, first of all, you get the uh, permission from your guide or your supervisor, and guide has to send your research proposal to the institutional review board. We call it IRB, institutional review board. So IRB has to evaluate your research proposal. They have to check whether the number of animals you are using is adequate or not. They don't allow excessive number of animals to be used. And institutional review board actually is a body in any university where animal experimentation is performed, which supervises the animal research being conducted in that university at master's level or at PhD level. And all the research proposals which are to be performed on animals have to be sent to the institutional review board. And there's another committee which we call as IUCSC, Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. That committee time and again comes to the laboratory and checks whether the animals are kept in humane condition, in proper conditions or not, whether they are given proper food or not, whether they are given proper humidity, temperature, water, and living conditions or not. So if they find out that the researcher is performing experiments which are against the animal rights, the study can be, stopped, can be halted. So once the institutional review board and IACUC, institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. These two boards, once they okay your research proposal, you are free to start your research. Now, before performing your research, you have to go through literature survey. You have to check what other researchers have done in this area. Now, for example, if you are performing research on ulcer, like you want to check a natural product, a natural plant, which is used as a folklore medicine in ulcer. Now, your mind thinks that you want to check which chemicals are present in it and whether this plant extract can be used in comparison with other anti-ulcer drugs or not. So you discuss it with your professor, professor okays you, and your such proposal is okayed by the IRB and Animal Use Committee. In the research proposal, you have to specify exactly the roadmap which you have to follow from A to Z. What number of animals you will use, which type of animals you will use, how many groups you will make of them, how many animals will be consisting of in that group, and which experiments you have to perform, which results will be considered as positive results and which results will be considered as the negative results, and how you will prove that 90% of your results are perfect or they are correct. So there are certain methods which are internationally recognized throughout the world. Now, for example, if I am performing anti-ulcer research, if I am performing anti-inflammatory research, if even I am performing anti-cancer research, there are standard parameters, standard methods which are adapted throughout the world and which I have to go through, which I have to use to convince the other researchers, my other peers, my other colleagues that look, the research which I have done is up to date, and this can be rationalized, this can be considered as a positive. So to give authentication to our research, we need to perform a statistical analysis. A statistical analysis, is performed just to tell the supervisor and the rest of the masses in the world that 95% of my research is correct. So how we do it? We usually give the probability 5%, probability. 5% probability is given like, okay, we just give this much gap that 5% chances are there that our research is done in a wrong way. But 95% we are sure that this research is proper. So, as I tell you, if, for example, you start doing research with the animals, you have to order the animals which you want to use from a specific vendor. You have to mention it. You have to put it. You have to write each and every activity which you perform in the lab in your logbook, and then that logbook is actually being checked almost every week, every month by your supervisor. You check, you keep writing whatever you do every day in the logbook. So once you order the animals and they get to your laboratory, you have to provide animals with the rodent toe. You have to provide them with sufficient amount of water, sufficient amount of food, and at least 2 to 3 days you should not start the research in the beginning, because we have to acclimatize. We have to let the animals get used to the environment. So we weigh the animals, we divide them into certain groups, we give them food and water every day, we cleanse them, we clean the cages, in which we keep them. So we have bigger cages, we have smaller cages. Smaller cages are usually for the mice, and bigger cages are usually for the uh, for the rats, sorry. And in the same way, rabbits and other larger animals have other, containers where we can put them in. So once the animals come, we weigh them, we check their physiological conditions, we write them down, what's the how they behave, and once we have to start the research, we have to divide them into certain groups. Now, as I was telling you earlier, that if I want to perform anti-ulcer research, I have to make at least a few 4 to 5 different groups. In one group, at least 6 to 10 mice must be there. This is a minimum standard, in pharmacology. So we name the groups. Like in one group where we have put 8 to 10 mice, in one group we will administer the drug, that drug which will induce the ulcer in those rats or those mice, for example, if you are using mice or rats, or even if we use rabbits, we give some drugs which we learn from the literature. We get permission from the supervisor. We give that drug either dissolved in the water, or we give it we call it per oral, PO. Intragastric, route is adapted. So one group is, for example, consisting of 8 animals. We will induce ulcer in all the 8 animals. For example, any diluted acid can be given. Many different types of substances are there to induce ulcer, for example. So in one group you will induce ulcer, other group you will keep as it is, just like a normal group. The third group you will induce the disease, and you will give them the drug which you want to perform research on. The fourth group, you will induce the disease, and you will give the drug which is usually used in the market in the for the alleviation of ulcer conditions. So after almost 7 days to 15 days of animal modeling, we have to sacrifice all the animals. We have to look, macroscopically through our eyes or through the magnifying glass. We have to use microscope. We perform HE staining, what we call as hematoxylin eosin. We just want to check how much WBCs have entered into the inflamed or ulcered area. Then we perform biochemical parameters. Different biochemical parameters can be performed. And then based on our research proposal, we deduce the results after performing the biochemical parameters. It depends on the university and the country and the supervisor at which level he takes you. Whether he asks you to perform up to biochemical parameters only and start writing your research article, or he asks you to go to the molecular parameters. So research is basically quite interesting. There's nothing to worry about that. But of course, it's time consuming. And you know, okay, if any student has certain queries, certain confusions or questions regarding basic and applied research, uh, wet and dry research, or animal experimentation, they may ask, they can post it here. I'll try to uh, answer those questions, inshallah. Ta'ala. Any question by the participants regarding basic research?
यस सर, स्क्रीन पे क्वेश्चन आ रहे हैं, आप देखिए।
स्क्रीन पे नीचे
सर सामने ही।
Okay, what is the
Okay,
main
what is
difference
the
between
main
qualitative and quantitative?
qualitative and quantitative
For Kalina.
for Kalina?
Okay, I think I
Okay,
discussed it
I think
earlier.
I discussed it earlier.
Qualitative
Qualitative
research
research
is more on
is more
the
on the
meaning of the
meaning
words,
of the words,
explanation of the
explanation
concept,
of the concept,
experiences.
experiences.
Whenever a
Never
researcher wants to
such
get deep knowledge about any concept which is not properly understood by the researcher or by the masses, and you want to perform research on that. For that, you perform interviews, you conduct surveys, you conduct, you ask some people, some researchers to go to certain localities. They live there for a few months, a certain period of time, and they gather information regarding that. We call that type of research, survey type of research where we conduct interviews and group discussions and questionnaires are used as a qualitative research. But once you perform research on experimentation uh, and surveys, but those surveys are closed angle questions, given. We call that as the quantitative research. So animal research, uh, human experimentation, for example, clinical trials, they all are type of quantitative research. But if you perform surveys, purely surveys, interviews, we call that as the quantitative, sorry, if you focus on numbers, you call it quantitative research. And if you focus on surveys and interviews only, you call it qualitative research. So they are quite different from each other. Most of the time in quantitative research, you have to work in the laboratory, while in qualitative research, you don't have to work in the laboratory. Any other question, please? Sir, please tell laboratory-based or survey-based research. Well, it depends on your nature, whether you want to perform research in the laboratory or you want to perform research which is based on surveys and interviews. Every human being is different. Some like to have to stay in the lab environment. Some don't like it. So basically, laboratory research is more time consuming, and you have to be present in the lab from morning to the evening, and you have fixed period of time. While in survey research, the qualitative type of research, you are quite free, and you have to perform certain surveys. You have to give participants some questionnaires, or you conduct some certain interviews. So it depends on a person's nature, whether you like survey research, which is quite easier to perform, and whether you want to perform laboratory research. Throughout the world, laboratory research is considered more better. A pure scientist, a good scientist, would like to work in the laboratory. But those who just want to get degrees and they don't want to learn more, they usually prefer the survey research. So once again, it depends. which subject you like, and which type of research you like. Well, which animal is easy to handle? Very interesting question, Miss Anita. Miss Anita, rabbits are quite easy to handle, but they are quite bigger in size, and in the same way, they are very much expensive as compared to the rats or mice. Mice are very simple to handle. I remember when I used to perform research on animal model, my Chinese lab fellow girls, they used to carry the mice and sometimes used to take them to their rooms, and they used to put them in the pocket, and those animal which are basically grown and grown up in the laboratory. Those are born in the laboratory. They have never seen other world. They are not wild. They don't bite. Basically, they never bite. They are not wild animals. They are not wild rats or mice. So, in my point of view, mice are the easiest to handle basically, and they are also cheaper and they economical. So, and their genome, if you want to perform genetics related research, the genome is quite resembling with the human genome. Okay. The other question is, sir, in your point of view, which research is best and easy, laboratory or survey research? Well, in my point of view, if someone would ask me, I would like to perform laboratory research. I don't like survey research. And but as I said earlier, it depends on your nature and it depends on the subject in which you want to perform research. Like in pharmacy practice, usually the research is qualitative, means it's survey based. It's usually questionnaires are presented. While in pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical analysis, pharmacology, pharmacognosy, you have to perform quantitative research or the laboratory research. So once again, it depends on the student's nature and in which subject they want to perform take degree, higher degree. So kindly repeat when we are divided by a rate. You said 7 to 15 days we look after them by microscopically. So which type of solution or drug apply? Repeat this process or step again. Well, question by Ms. Hera Hussain. Okay, well, it depends on which disease we are studying or in which disease we are performing research. Usually, animal models are established not more than 3 weeks. Means what is the establishing of animal model? Establishing of animal model means we start giving them drug day 1 and the last day when we sacrifice them and we take out the specimen or the organ of their body and put them in refrigerator, liquid nitrogen for the next experiments. So this is known as establishment of animal model. Usually we don't go above that because we know that if we give drugs to the animals for more than 21 days, majority of them will die. And this also depends whether you perform acute research or chronic research. If you want to perform acute research, only one drug is given for a few days, which produce lighter symptoms, acute symptoms are produced. But if we want to study the chronic disease, we give higher doses of drugs to induce that disease, and we establish the model for a longer period of time. So it depends. Usually, as I said, the time is dependent on which disease, which pharmacological condition you want to uh, study. Now, we can dissolve the drug in the liquid form. We can give the drug in solid form or semi-solid form. Or if we are performing some topical research, like we want to check that which drugs or which uh, natural substances can heal the wounds or the injury is better, we can apply the drugs topically as well. So pharmacology is quite vast field of knowledge, and different vehicles can be used to introduce drug to the animal's body. Okay, the next question is, sir, if we change the dilution's result may be change or not. Result may be change or not. Of course, uh, once you dilute the drugs, results surely will change. Uh, we in allopathy believe in that if you dilute the drug, results will surely be changed. And usually we reduce the doses because whatever we study in animals, we have to use the same drug on human volunteers as well. So we reduce the drugs dosage as per weight of the animal. Whatever the weight of animal is, we usually give it into uh, kilogram, milligram per kg. It's very easy to calculate the doses for the animals. It's not so dilutions are increase in the doses do play a very important role, of course. Okay, the next question is, so if we change the dilution, okay, this is already Abdul Sami Sheikh, very informative regarding research. Abdul Sami Sheikh, I appreciate your comments. You are chairman at Shablatif University, Department of Pharmacy. I do appreciate if you have participated in this program. Okay, Sajid Hussain. Sir Hamid, happy to see sir after a long time. Sajid, once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Those who are my colleagues or my students, if they are appreciating my online research lecture, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.